This morning, I'm going to be talking about the labors of today's spiritual servers. For us, today's spiritual servers, labor is the path to illumination. When we talk about labors, we're really talking about the esoteric side of what it means to labor as a spiritual server. When we're thinking esoterically, we want to think about the labor of brotherhood, the labor of the community, the labor of hierarchy, which is a very advanced labor. So as I'm talking to you about things today on the subject of labor, keep in mind that the axis of the whole talk is about the labor of hierarchy, the labor of community, the labor of the brotherhood, toward which we are all striving to become members of hierarchy, to eventually achieve self-mastery. This is why the teachings say, and everything I'm saying this morning is based on the principle of the teaching, is that if you want to become illumined, if you want to become enlightened, you want to walk the path of illumination, which is through the path of labor. So that's what I'll be talking about this morning and also next week. We'll have to come up with some jazzy titles, or no one on our YouTube account are going to listen. Labor? Bah humbug. Meet at the mall. How sad. The Master M gives us two principles for this kind of labor, for advanced labor. The first principle is labor without limit. If you are coming and saying, I'll do this for an hour, but then I'm going to have to leave. And the next time you come to do it again, and you say, I am tired of this job, then you are not worthy of the path of illumination, to travel that path. Or you may say, I will come, but I'll likely be late. Or some will say, I will try to come and help you out, but if I don't show up, just go on without me. See, perhaps we could say these are the first steps toward understanding the value of service. But this is not the labor of brotherhood or the labor of community, which MM is saying is an advanced labor. Labor without limit is how true spiritual servers work in today's society. I was over here yesterday with my kids having lunch. We made wonderful just sandwiches, and it was so peaceful sitting outside on the picnic benches. And you know, the countryside over here is so quiet. You don't hear traffic, you don't hear sirens, you don't hear airplanes going over the top. And anyway, it was quite lovely. And we were also joined by Richard and Terry, who were engaged in spiritual labor from early morning until mid-afternoon, making these plant beds for us to put dirt in and then seedlings. You know, and we're going to have two beautiful, beautiful vegetable gardens. And this is just the first step to see how we're going to do, our commitment level is. But the joy was just so incredible, and my kids got involved, and Gail brought some seedling plants for cucumbers, was it? And cucumbers and squash. Cucumbers and squash. You know, she started the seedlings from a little bitty seed and watched them grow and brought them over. You know, it's just simple but dedicated, and it was so fun. It was so beautiful. Labor without limit. This actually begins normally when we are young. Life, I think, will bring our young disciples many tests of endurance. So when they become adults, service and labor will not only come naturally to them, they will be able to serve without end and without complaint. When I was a youngster, I did many things. My parents put me into music lessons when I was 3 years old, starting with the piano and then later the violin. I was required to practice the piano 1 hour a day until I was 5 years old. When I was advanced, air quote, advanced, I was required to practice 2 hours a day, and then later 3 hours a day. If I failed, I was disciplined, but I was disciplined in a positive way by being given something else to do. No time out. Then when I was 7, I began taking violin lessons and was made to divide my time between those two instruments. In addition, I learned how to wash and iron clothes. Learned back in the day, remember, we were ironing. Learned how to set the table for meals, and eventually how to cook. I was also taught when and when not to engage in conversation with the adults, to be polite and kind, and so forth. When I got to high school, the lessons and tasks continued, but had to be integrated with homework, violin performance, a social life, which was always overseen by both my parents. The lifestyle continued throughout college. I learned unlimited labor. When I got to college, I learned the value of concentration and endurance and discipline. When my friends were busy socializing and later failing their courses because they were at the university to have fun, I was either practicing in one of the music rooms provided by the conservatory or in my dorm room studying. I was allowed to enjoy a time out on Saturday evenings and Sunday afternoons. Now, in confession, I took a semester off. It was not a good thing. Taking a semester off was playtime. I was still in school, but I played hard. And then the next semester, I had to work twice as hard to make up for all my failures from that fun semester. It was not fun later, I learned. But kids act out. Eventually, you're going to act out. They're going to, rebel. And I didn't rebel until I got to college and Mom and Dad were home. Yeah. But it was so ingrained, that kind of discipline was so ingrained into me, that all I needed was a wake-up call and then return back to the studies. So now today, I'm working hard as ever. Many of my co-workers are in the same boat. All of them are very beautiful and highly creative. And it is really inspiring to be around such spiritual servers. Like the 3 ways to live your life that I talked about last Sunday, they are living in that 3rd stage where they put others ahead of themselves. Labor means to put your shoulder to the labor and stay there until you die. Some think escaping from the labor is a rest for them. It is just the opposite. It is hell for them, which it ended up being for me. Not to mention my parents' dismay. But how to explain, this kind of life? Some may say, as they're listening to this morning's talk, She's just saying these things so that will work for her. But that is not service. You are not working for anybody. You are instead, now listen carefully, integrating yourself. You are fulfilling the purpose of life. That was the first principle, labor without limit. Now the second principle of labor is acceptance of tasks without rejection. You are put on a committee and told to do this and that. Okay, so you're in the office and you're writing a letter, and then someone comes in and says, stop what you're doing and go clean the bathroom. Can you do it? If you can't, then you're just not quite ready. Do not come to the labor of these two principles and say, why am I taking the trash out to the trash can? Which some of you do here every week. To take it all the way a half mile down the driveway to get it to the street, right? And no, I don't even know who's doing it. That's how humble they are. Or you say, why am I having to clean the bathrooms? I'm a professor. I'm a president. Why should I be vacuuming everything? In our White Mountain offices, our staff members do everything from giving lectures to handling donations, preparing publications and mailings, or vacuuming, and even going to the office supplies store to buy ink for our printers, all in one day. When you are serving, you have worth. A great spiritual teacher shared a story. He said there was a young man that was working in his office. The young man was telling others, I worked all day. And he did not even say thank you to me. 3 years I was there. He did not give me one gift. Can you understand that? All my labor was wasted. Well, the teacher said, really? How pitiful you are to go through this trash in your mind or engage yourself in a labor and then 2 days later escape. How pitiful. What are you doing? You are really demonstrating where your consciousness, the level of your consciousness is. And the universe is not going to trust you with higher labors. You are not trustworthy. You cannot do it. Well, he was a no-nonsense teacher who labored until the last month of his life. So these are two things that are very important to know. Labor without limit and acceptance of tasks without rejection, without negative emotions, complaints, gossip, and so on. If the person leaves and cannot finish it, do it yourself. These are the principles that we are going to digest in our consciousness. Remember, we're talking about advanced service. We're talking about walking the path of illumination to become masters in Taurus. So these are two principles, just two principles that the Master M gave to us to digest in our consciousness if we are really going to understand what labor of the brotherhood is all about. Now here's a story. A modern master described how the Buddha had encouraged his monks by sharing, okay, sorry. Typo. Okay, let me start again because it's a beautiful story. A modern master described how the Buddha had encouraged his monks by sharing that those who practiced diligently would surely be enlightened in 7 days. Or if not in 7 days, then in 7 months or 7 years. A young American monk heard this and asked if it was still true. The master promised that if the young monk was continuously mindful without a break for only 7 days, he would be enlightened. Excitedly, the young monk started his 7 days, only to be lost in forgetfulness 10 minutes later. Coming back to himself, he again started his 7 days, only to become lost once more in mindless thought, perhaps about what he would do after his enlightenment. Again and again, he began his 7 days. And again, he lost his continuity of mindfulness. Well, a week later, he was not enlightened. But he had become very much aware of his habitual fantasies and wandering of mind. A most instructive way to begin his practice on the path to real awakening. And here's another nice story by Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "I have only 3 enemies. My favorite enemy, the one most easily influenced for the better, is the British Empire. My second enemy, the Indian people, well, is far more difficult. But my most formidable opponent is a man called or named Mohandas K. Gandhi. With him, I seem to have very little influence." I truly believe that to become a true server, an Agni Yogi, is found in one who lives these 2 principles given to us by the great sage, Master M. The second principle of labor, as I said, is acceptance of tasks without rejection. If you want to serve the Master, if you want to serve your family, if you want to serve hierarchy, you are going to be tested in this principle. The acceptance of tasks without rejection. It starts with the little tasks and graduates to life tasks. Now, the first principle of labor was a labor without limit. To labor without limit, to be mindful every single minute of your day of service, is your spiritual practice, the path to real awakening. Here's a story by Desert Fathers. Amos said, "In the beginning, there is struggle and a lot of work for those who come near to God. But after that, there is indescribable joy. It is just like building a fire. At first it's smoky and your eyes water, but later you get the desired result. Thus, we ought to light the divine fire in ourselves with tears and effort." We can find many parables and many examples by holy ones and by modern day teachers who try to teach us the value of labor. And once we understand the value of labor, we understand that all of our labor, all of our sweat and tears, all of our sacrifices are not done for ourselves, but in service to the Lord. If when you engage in easy or difficult labors, you are thinking what kind of gifts of gratitude you're going to receive, then you are lost. When I was growing up and investing myself in all those many hours of labor, no one told me how special or how unique I was. It was just expected of me. And because it was expected of me, such endless labor taught me about the path to illumination. That the path to illumination is an endless path. The path to illumination bypasses the path to egotism. It saves us from many incarnations of suffering. Here's another story. The devil appeared to a brother in the disguise of an angel of light and said to him, "I am the angel Gabriel, and I have been sent to you." However, the brother said to him, "See if you are not being sent to someone else. I certainly do not deserve to have an angel sent to me." Immediately, the devil disappeared. The angel was the devil known to us as vanity and ego. In our labors, we are not looking for praise. We are trying to find our way back to Shambhala, to the Father's home. So labor is really a supreme activity to synchronize and cooperate with the purpose that is behind the whole manifestation of life. And we need to go there step by step. If we do not go there, we are delaying our evolution. The more we delay our evolution, the more pain and suffering will come to awaken you that you are doing wrong. When I think about our penal system, and certainly in this country, which we are much more familiar with, there is no rehabilitation, or let me say this, not to be so generalized, but there is such little rehabilitation. What they do in these systems, they bring pain and suffering. But where is the enlightenment? They don't understand. They don't give the teaching. But we are. You know, we have this wonderful opportunity that we have brought the teachings, we have taken the teaching into the prison system. This is a very huge deal. It's an incredible service offering to the whole penal system, you know, of bringing the teaching. We talk about freedom in these courses. We talk about the practice of harmlessness. We talk about the value of joy. And quite a bit of time is spent talking about service. Then they learn about the soul and what the soul is. They learn how to concentrate, how to have purpose. They learn about the purpose of life. So, while the prison system is punishing them, without rehabilitation, we're bringing the light into many, many prisons across the country, bringing the teaching of the masters to them. You can imagine the responses that we're getting. The majority, 95% of the responses are so grateful. It's given them, if I can say this, a new lease, literally a new lease on life. The freedom and the depth to understanding that the purpose of life is not drugs. It is not alcoholism. It is not being criminal. It is about the soul. It's so powerful. The more we delay our evolution, I'm repeating myself, the more pain and suffering will come to awaken you that you are doing wrong. Now, in the time left, let us study these two principles from Master M a little bit more closely. Here's a quote from the book called New Era Community. The community, being a fellowship, first of all, sets as a condition for entrance two conscious decisions: labor without limit and acceptance of tasks without rejection. It is possible to eliminate faint-heartedness. As a result of unlimited labor, there may be a broadening of consciousness. But many people, not bad otherwise, do not envision the result, being frightened by incessant labor and enormous tasks. And yet they have accepted basically the idea of community. It would be harmful to include these yet weak people in the community. Again, that's from New Era Community. The qualities of a laborer or a person who is going to labor should develop 7 qualities. So I'm going to give you these 7 qualities and just speak briefly, about each quality, so we'll have time for questions and answers. The first is dedication. Dedication means we are really putting our life, efforts, mind, emotions, and actions into the labor. No matter what we are doing, we are dedicated to that task. The secret behind this is that if our energies are divided, if our forces are divided at the time we are doing something, like the monk and the Buddhist, the American Buddhist trying to be a Buddha. If our forces are divided at the time we are doing something, what's happening is that we create a conflict within our system. And that would be our foundation. Remember, I talked about foundation a couple of weeks ago. So, dedication, when you're building those plant beds and you smack your thumb with the hammer, be concentrated on your purpose, the underlying purpose of what you're doing. And the same thing, when we're out there in that hot sun this summer, taking care of those little beautiful plants that are going to yield wonderful vegetables, be dedicated. In other words, don't swear. Don't think, I wish I were at the mall. I wouldn't know. The second one is creativity. Creativity means that on this level, to find the best way to perform that labor in the best way possible. Creativity also means that we are making our labor part of something greater. So it's not just making these plant beds and putting chicken wire in and dirt in and these seedlings. It's the result. It's going to feed a lot of people. There's no reason we can't take this half-acre property in the front of our yard, and feed the hungry. That's not a vision. It's just an idea. But the point is that you're making your labor part of something greater. When you work on a committee, the garden committee, what is something greater? It's learning how to work together, creating harmony for a single purpose, for feeding others, and so forth. Number 3 is expression of your inner divinity, your inner beauty. At the time you are trying to do the labor, you will see and be amazed what different kinds of moods and attitudes and feelings and thoughts you have while performing your labor, like vacuuming. Bring your divinity when you are doing something. Bring your inner beauty out into manifestation when you are doing something, because you are starting the labor of bringing your soul into the birth process. Number 4, the labor must be performed with the spirit of inclusiveness. This is a great test. And if you think one moment, you will see how humanity is trapped in many destructive actions because they do not follow this rule. All labor must be inclusive, which means never do anything that is not good for others. Number 5, you are going to be sacrificial. This means that if you labor with the sacrificial spirit, then you are not expecting anything for your own interest. I realize, again, this is very advanced. This is very advanced labor, but this is our vision. This is what's been given to us by the Master, a great one. Unless you are totally giving, you will not be successful in releasing the potentials within yourself and creating integration and fusion with your higher self. And number 6, all of our labor must be oriented toward the future, not controlled by the past, not controlled by conditions and situations of the present, but must be future oriented. So this is why with our vegetable garden, we're starting small. We're starting very simply. Kind of, exercising our muscles, learning what will work and what won't work. And once we learn that, then we'll take the next step. See, all of this is future planning, and it takes time. Number 7, the sacredness of labor and laborers. The labor you are doing is sacred. The laborers, that's an Iowa pronunciation if I've ever heard it. Laborers. How about co-workers? Who are doing that job are sacred too. If co-workers and people who are working in one group or for one job consider each one really sacred or precious, what a change is going to happen. So what do you think? It's, I wanted to share a little bit of my own life to show you, that it can't, laboring at an advanced level doesn't happen overnight. This is why we as parents and grandparents with our young ones, if we see discipleship, in our young ones, let's start them early. So they learn their worth and the value of labor. So by the time they get to college, they won't need a whole semester off. But they're going to learn, dedication and concentration and endurance. So by the time they graduate from the university, they're ready to go out into the world and bring the purpose of life into humanity.